Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Love Unplugged. I'm your host, Jessica, and today we have a very special guest. Please join me in welcoming Sophie Collins. She is the CEO and co-founder of the lifestyle brand One Wednesday. So, Sophie, I am truly honored to have you join me on the show today. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Amazing. So let's dive into it. Can you walk us through your career leading up to creating One Wednesday?
Yes, definitely. It's kind of one that is a little bit all over the place, but I will do my best to keep it succinct. It's been very varied over the course of my life, and I was the type of person that always wanted to earn money and have my own financial autonomy. And so at the young age of 10 or 12, I started babysitting. That turned into being a lifeguard, being a camp counselor, and then when I found the love of acting, I was very focused on my acting career for about 10 years, ended up going to university for theater, and long story short, ended up working kind of in the acting field, while also, as most actors do who are trying to make it, working in hospitality and retail, and kind of realized in my early 20s that I wanted a career that was more goal oriented, where I could see the results of my actions. And acting was a really tough place for that. As you can imagine, there's not a lot of control that you have over the outputs of your career. And I thought, what better way to find like a goal oriented setting than to go back to business school? So I decided in 2013 to go back to school and did my MBA. And then kind of all of that bubbled up to a desire to work in technology. I had a really important woman in my life, my aunt, and still do to this day. She's amazing. She worked in tech, and she had what I looked up as like this really incredible career, had moved from Canada to California, and had just done a really great job of building this career for herself. So I was like, tech seems like a cool place to be. It was about 10 years ago. And for the last 10 years, worked in technology, worked mostly on the sales side. I'm like a natural salesperson. That's like really where I found joy and fun and success, and did that for the last 10 years. And over the last 4 years have been building my business One Wednesday, which you mentioned at the top, and have been running it full time for almost a year now. We started as a side hustle. We both really wanted to start a business, myself and my co-founder Joni, and came up with the idea and really worked on it outside of work hours. Both of us are also in the midst of building our families. We both had 2 kids in the last 4 years, so it's been really busy. And we decided, now was the time. This year was the time to really take it more seriously and really focus on it full time. And it kind of got to the point where it couldn't really be an off the desk project anymore, and we wanted it to be something greater. But we're really proud of how we built it. It's been bootstrapped since the beginning. So as probably most of your listeners know, that means like money in, money out. There's no external funding. So everything we do is our own money put into it at the beginning, and then our revenue, which drives our growth. And it's been a really incredible year running the business. We kind of made this decision when we launched nationwide in Holt Renfrew last October of 2022. And it just felt like a big inflection point and turning point for the brand. So we wanted to make sure we could give it all the love that it needed and deserved. And it's been so much fun.
That's amazing. Now, that's quite the change of industries along the way. Like acting, tech, then having a lifestyle brand, completely different areas. Uh, Obviously, you never knew at the beginning that this is where you're going to end up. Did you have any kind of feelings of loss as you transitioned from industries?
Definitely with acting. As most young people do, they have these like grand dreams of what their life is going to look like. And I think that when you are 10 years old and you're like dreaming of winning an Oscar, and then 10 years later you're working in tech, you kind of have this moment of like, okay, like, did I fail at that? But I was recently walking with a friend actually this morning, and I was saying that I kind of had this realization yesterday that the launch of my podcast this year is kind of like bringing together all of my worlds and all of my experience, because, the podcast itself is like the acting component, communication, and then you have like the business side of it, bringing together my personal brand in one Wednesday, and the storytelling aspect of it. So I don't look back a lot. I really am a forward looking person, which I think can be helpful, but also detrimental, because you're kind of like, what's in the past, in the past. And I'm just mostly focused on the future. But I will say that it served me really well in terms of shaking things off and being open to change and flexibility and being able to pivot. And then, yeah, I don't miss tech at all. If I'm being completely honest, I do miss the like camaraderie of working for a larger organization and like the team that comes along with it. But I don't miss the work itself necessarily. I get a lot of that still in my day-to-day life. Like at the end of the day, if you have a consumer product brand you are selling, that is like the innate requirement of any founder. And so I don't really feel like I'm missing that part of it. But yeah, we'll see how the next few years goes. We'll see if I kind of have a turnaround and miss tech. But the nice thing is when you're an entrepreneur, you can take on all sorts of different facets of the business. So if I miss tech, I can dig into our website and update it and get scratch my itch there.
There's more than enough tech elements in growing a small business. I mean, you're doing it
Yeah.
all essentially. So I think that need will get satisfied if you ever do have it.
I think so. Yeah, there's no boredom in entrepreneurship, that's for sure.
No. If you're bored, there's something else going on.
Yeah, there's something wrong.
So how did the idea for One Wednesday come to be? Like you and your co-founder, like how did you guys get the idea to launch this business and the types of products that you're going to include?
Yeah, so it all came together quite naturally and organically. Joni and I, my co founder, and I have a lot of mutual friends. And one day we met through mutual friends, and I was on my first maternity leave at that point from a tech company. And she said, I'm going to go check out my friend's new coffee shop. Does anyone want to come? And I was like, for the first time in my life, like I didn't have any plans throughout the day other than to take care of my child. I later learned that that was not the way that I thrive, and I needed to make more plans, but was one of the rare times in my life where I was like able to be spontaneous and, go out for coffee with a friend in the middle of the day. And we sat down for coffee, and I honestly think we talked for like 2 or 3 hours just about our lives and our interests and, what we wanted to create for our families and for our careers. And Joni at the time had just recently sold her business. It was a soup company, and so in the food space, and she was excited about like what her next opportunity would be. And she voiced this to me, and I said, I've always been interested in entrepreneurship, but have kind of taken the safer path now with technology. I kind of like, left my risk side in the past with acting and really focused on building a sustainable career. But, I would love to kind of keep the conversation going and think about something we might be able to do together. It's always been like a huge excitement and passion of mine. Both of my parents were entrepreneurs. And so I think that, for good or bad, that is passed down to you in some way, shape, or form in terms of just kind of seeing people create something from nothing. And I always just have naturally gravitated towards entrepreneurs as friends and as people I look up to. And so I always thought there would be that kind of entrepreneurship period of my life at some point. And so Joni and I kept talking. We actually first started a food idea. So we worked on that for like almost a year. And it was, I'm not going to say what it was just because one day maybe we'll start it, but like it was a very, very challenging food product to work with, like a new type of protein bar essentially, but like with a very specific ingredient. And kind of after, working on that for about a year, we sat down and said, okay, like this is not what we want to create. It's just too complicated. And if we can't figure it out in a year, this probably isn't going to be something that's going to work long term. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board. I had my first baby. I was back at school, back at work. Joni was pregnant with her first baby. And we started talking about moms and new moms and gifts that you got as a mom. And we started talking about the idea of textiles and the fact that I had received probably like a dozen different types of textile blankets, burp cloths, breastfeeding covers, whatever it was. And we thought about the idea of having what we called a universal throw. So something that was durable enough to clean up after your kids and dogs, cozy enough to wrap yourself up in. I have one on my chair here today. And but could also be like worn as a scarf on a plane, and you could wrap your baby in it. And so really like that idea of one product doing more than one thing. And that was how we started One Wednesday. We found a supplier in Turkey with like the highest ethical and sustainable standards, and we grew from there based on not only our own ideas of what we wanted to create for our brand, but then also what people were asking us for. We had a lot of people reaching out, talking about bath towels, and different, types of products. And me, for myself, I could never find a great waffle knit robe in any store at that time. Like this was about 4 years ago. Now, obviously, there's a lot of really amazing brands doing that. Like Parachute's a really good example. But we were like one of the first to market with a waffle knit robe that was super high quality, plush, really like delicious and luxurious to sink into. And so we knew that, if our customers were asking for it, it was something that we could consider. And that's essentially how One Wednesday was born. But I would say as a brand, we're ever evolving. We've always wanted to position ourselves as a brand that can be in every room of your home. And we're really just getting started.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay. What would you say were key in launching your business, creating this community around you, and getting you to where you're at today, where you are able to do it full time? You're now in Hold Renfrew, doing like store or pop ups there as well. Like, that's amazing. How did you do that in such a short period of time?
It's so funny because when you're doing it yourself, it feels so long. Like you're like, oh, we have all these goals and we want to do all these things, and it feels like it's taking forever. But if what I try to do oftentimes is look back like over the course of a year, over the course of 4 years, 5 years, and say, wow, look how far we've come. And I think that reflection practice is super important to not only just take a moment to be grateful, but then also realize like what you really can accomplish in a short period of time. I would say that, you know, we really started like as many brands do with friends and family. Like we had a 50-person friends and family event at my house. Joni literally drove out to Richmond to pick up our shipment the day before. She dropped it off at my house. Like my son went to bed. Her like dog was barking. Her dog was in the car. Her baby's screaming. She like drops off the goods. Me and my husband like sat up like late at night, rolling the throws, hand tying them with eucalyptus and like beautiful ribbon. And we had 50 friends and family over, and we set up a POS system, and that's like literally how we started. And then the next day we launched our website. And so like word of mouth, and we have both an incredible support system and our friends and family who are advocates of the brand, but then also like give us real feedback, which is really helpful. And then everything else has also been organic, like all of our social growth, our marketing campaigns, everything has been grassroots. I luckily like have my personal brand, which can help subsidize some of that growth in terms of, reaching people. But, at the end of the day, like it really is just like that daily consistent commitment to reaching out to influencers to gift them, coming up with really exciting creative direction for shoots, having really wonderful content on your social media platforms. Okay, then you build your email campaign list. Like you kind of check these things off one by one. Like we just started a TikTok this year, like it's been 4 years. So you have to realize like what is your capacity, but then also how can you push yourself to be consistent every day in what you choose your approach to be.
Wow. Okay. I love that. Those were some key takeaways there for those tuning in. Now, I kind of want to dive into the sourcing of the materials and all that type of stuff, the products itself. I mean, coming from somebody who doesn't have a product based business that has thought about it in the past, I'm just like, I don't even know where to start. Like, how do you even figure out what manufacturers or anything like that? Like, how do you get started on this for those that are thinking about starting a product based business?
Literally Google it. Like it is everything. We have almost, in a way, there's too much information, because you Google
Mhm.
like Turkish manufacturers and you're going to get like millions and millions of hits. And, you send your money off to someone, you've never met them in person. Like, we also started this a year before COVID started, and we weren't able to go visit our suppliers. We're only just now in May of next year planning to go to Turkey for almost 5 years into business. We honestly just had our first Zoom call with one of our major manufacturers. So it takes time, but really it comes down to like doing the work, sending the emails, Googling for hours and hours and hours on end. And honestly, I'll probably send like 50 emails and maybe one person gets back to you. Because the other thing you have to think about, especially as a bootstrap business, when you have an idea, like for example, with the universal throw, we're super specific about the size that we wanted it to be. We had like specific measurements laid out on the floor. We were like, okay, does this work as a baby swaddle? Like, is this too thick to wrap around my neck? Like, am I going to want to wear this? Like, what is the pattern going to look like? And so when you're first starting your business and you want to buy product, you have to keep in mind, like, many factories have minimums, for example. And a lot of the time we were going to these factories and saying, like, we want 50 of these like custom units. And sometimes that can really be not something that they're wanting to hear. And the other piece was, we really wanted to source from manufacturers that were aligned with our values. Like, obviously quality being number one, but then ethical and sustainable really being a part of that as well. And so making sure your suppliers are certified in the different certifications like Ecotex and SEDEX, which are ethical and sustainable manufacturing certifications, kind of like you would think about food and organic, like similar in that way. And then factoring that into your price point and all of those things. So all that to say, it's like what everyone says, like, you just got to spend the time sending the emails and using Google. I think in so many ways we're so lucky with all of the tools that we have now as entrepreneurs, like Shopify, Squarespace, social media. And while it does breed obviously competition and more players in the market, at the end of the day, I really do think it's good for everyone, because it allows you not only to get your message out to your customers, but then also just, levels you up when you're thinking about, okay, how are we going to compete in this market, and how are we going to retain our customers?
Awesome. Okay, so let's dive into strategies. Let's go more operational side here. So, often when you are starting your business, it's more so sales and marketing, getting your product seen, increasing your visibility and whatnot. And the back end kind of gets neglected a little bit, which can hurt you when you're ready to scale. So, what have you done to put you in a position to be able to scale without pulling out your hair left, right, and center?
Yeah, it's really funny that you asked that, because we're in that position right now. We're basically at the point, we have over 150 SKUs if you count all of our colorways and sizing, now that we have apparel. And even just like the example of barcodes, like, it seems like a ridiculous example, but for each SKU you need a new barcode, and in order to have a barcode you need to create the barcode. And so even just getting all of those ducks in a row, I think, can be really daunting when you have like 8,000 things going on as an entrepreneur. So I think it's very important to have systems and processes in place. And truthfully, it's an ongoing audit. You always are auditing your processes and how you're doing things. For us, we use Google Drive as like our main system, in terms of like sharing documents, organization, keeping track of projects. We obviously have looked into more like project management based tools and that sort of thing. But at this point, the way that our systems are set up, it really is like based in Google Drive. That's how we communicate. We really are like an email focused. We do a lot of iMessaging, which is going to sound not that organized, but it just is what it is. Like, realistically, as two moms who, almost half the time are with our kids, like, you have to do what you have to do. But I'm the type of person that, let's say we talk about something over iMessage and make a decision, I will then go back into our drive and like file it where it needs to go. We're very heavy users of our calendar for reminders to keep us up to date on meeting agendas. And yeah, I think, it will continue to evolve as we grow. But I think that sometimes people get so like worked up about the processes and like forget about with what's actually happening on the front end. And you just figure it out as you go. Like, I think as long as you have a central source of truth, whether that be in Google Drive, Asana, Mondays, like whatever it is, Slack, whatever it is for you, you just need to make sure that's kind of the central source of truth, and like always refer back to that. And that's what we've been able to do thus far. And as I said, I think the next year or so, that's probably going to shift quite a bit. But in terms of, keeping us on task and what we're working towards, that's the best way for us to do it. And then of course we have like our marketing calendar. We have our monthly like marketing meetups where we decide on the calendar for the coming month, hopefully a few months out, but realistically sometimes you're working the month ahead. And that's where we go through, sale activations, campaigns that we want to run on social media and email, different ideas that I have. And then oftentimes it's really off the cuff. Like I'll go for a walk and I have an idea and I email our marketing team and like we'll execute on it. So I think you really in entrepreneurship have to allow for both avenues and be okay with both of those things being true at the same time.
All right, I like that. You mentioned your team. So you have obviously you and Joni.
Yeah.
Do you have full-time employees? Is it contractors? At what point did you make that decision to now bring on team members to support you?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when we started, I was like very on the marketing side and Joni was finance and logistics. And we very early on brought someone on to do our social media. Mostly we still work with contractors just because it allows us for more flexibility in them as well. And, the nice thing is you're able to grow with the people that you bring on. And, we work with a really incredible company, Bomb Creative, who does our social media. And they've just been really wonderful over the last 3 years to work with. And I think that's, as an entrepreneur, you get really nervous about giving up the thing that you do every day. And then once you give it up, you realize how much space it frees for yourself to grow the business in another way. Like, there'd be no way we'd be where we're at today if I was still answering DMs for One Wednesday's account. So yeah, so I think we've always been like marketing first. That's been our approach. We kind of founded the business in the time where D2C, direct to consumer, was like really hot, that no one was talking about wholesale 4 years ago. Whereas now it seems to be kind of veering back into, in-person experiences, retail, more wholesale. So again, as a small business, we're able to kind of like ebb and flow with what we see the market doing. And then we have our like warehouse and logistics team here in Vancouver. And so they deal with all of our shipping and logistics, freight in, freight out. We have, a shipper and broker that we work with, but again, mostly on the contracting side. And realistically, like when you're a mom, there really isn't an option to kind of continue to do everything. Like, you pretty early on have to say, like, where are we going to dig into our profit to free up our own time? For example, Joni was doing all of the shipping at first to start. And basically within a week, we were like, this is not going to work. And so we found a third party logistics manager who now does all of our shipping. So yeah, I would say like sooner the better when it comes to those sorts of things. And also like hiring for what you don't love to do. Like, I think as an entrepreneur, again, as I said, like you feel so in control. You want to feel in control of everything. But at the end of the day, like hiring a bookkeeper for us is going to be a lot more advantageous than me handling QuickBooks every month. And so like, where are you going to make those changes? That being said, I think it's important as a small business to keep an eye on everything. So even though like finance isn't my core strong suit, we have monthly finance meetings where we go through the P&L in detail so that I know exactly what's going on in and out of the business. Not only does that give me a better understanding of the business and where it's going, but also gives me the opportunity to say like, oh, that campaign, like that is working. Like this gifting strategy that we've been doing for 6 months, like that is working. And you can kind of see the fruits of your labor and then go and plan, what the next 3, 6, 12 months is going to look like.
Oh, that's great advice. I 100% agree. Even if you outsource it, you still need to know what's going on in your business. Regardless of what area of your business you've outsourced, you still need to be involved to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
And having that data is just going to help you make more informed decisions in your business. So it is important. And I love that you are still doing that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And like, I hope that I'm always doing that. Even if like one day we have a team of 100 people, I want to be able to be in those, even if I'm like literally just flitting about doing creative director, like fun things as I imagine I'll be doing in like 5 years. I want to be involved still in what's going on in like the finance side of things. I think that turning a blind eye, while it feels like something you might want to do, like obviously is very detrimental. And to be completely honest, my husband has been pretty instrumental in really encouraging me to keep a pulse on that. He comes from a finance background and I come from, I come from tech. So I have that side of myself, but like it really is the creative like vision that drives me with One Wednesday. And he's like, that's super important. And so he kind of keeps me on task too. We're very like yin and yang with those things. I'm very like, touchy feely and like this is what I'm feeling for next year, and he's like, okay, well, like have you figured out how you're going to pay for that? So it helps that he's like our like silent advisor.
That's awesome. A free silent advisor at your beck and call.
I say he's like
That's
our
amazing.
free CFO.
That's awesome. Now, let's talk about collaborations. I don't know, are you full time available in Holt Renfrew, or is it, okay, like
Yeah,
that's
so
next level. So
oh,
let's
thank
talk
you.
about this collaborations. How have you leveraged collaborations even outside of Holt Renfrew? How have you made those connections to be able to partner with them and have your products featured in whatever space they have?
Yeah. Well, honestly, everything comes down to relationships. I have always naturally been someone who places a lot of focus and emphasis and time on relationships. I am just naturally drawn to people. Like, while I love to hermit and like go to bed early, all those things, like, I really, really love to be social. And like, I have a lot of really, really good friends, and I love having really good friends. And I'm really focused on family relationships. I'm just like, I've always been into relationships, I've been into fostering them, keeping in touch with people, and I really love supporting people at the end of the day. That's actually why one of the big reasons I keep my personal brand going is because I love to be able to share other businesses that I love what they're doing, and they're doing something cool and different, and having like even the small as small of a platform as I do, to be able to do that is so fulfilling to me. And so, in terms of like Holt Renfrew, yeah, super exciting. We launched October 2022. We did this big launch in Toronto, hired a PR firm to really invest back into the relationship and show how much we cared and valued that partnership. And again, that was all everything, almost everything we've done has been so organic. I met the Holt Renfrew team at an event here in Vancouver. I was introduced to the team through my husband's cousin, who again is a good friend and who also runs a local business here in Vancouver, who I love to support. And we, yeah, I hit it off with the team. It was a really crazy week. My business partner went through something like really hard and personal, and I kind of jumped into the event without knowing what was going on for her. And yeah, met the team and we really got along. And luckily, the pillars we had established for our business, like one being really simply like leaving the world a better place than we found it. So every year we decide on a charity partner that we're going to give back to. This year it's BC Women, so we can get into that later on too. And then sustainability, ethical practices have always been like hugely important to us. And that's very aligned with the section of Holt Renfrew that we're in called Each Project. And so, yeah, again, I think it comes down to really prioritizing relationships and doing that really authentically. Like, I actually had a conversation with my friend about this today. It's not about creating relationships because that you think that they're going to get you somewhere or get you something. It is really about like connecting with people who you think are interesting, and that's it, like full stop. If one day you're able to collaborate with their company or that person, or, naturally your two companies are in a similar place and it makes sense to do something together, great. But that really shouldn't be the point. Like the point of connecting with people is to do just that. And it like really is the most beautiful part of the human experience. And so that's how I try to lead. And I hope like it rubs off on the people around me. And yeah, and I think like giving back what you get. Like we are so lucky to have such a beautiful community on social media. And as an example, each week I'll try to share almost all of the content. Anyone who tags One Wednesday, like I personally will try to share their content on my profile because I know it goes a long way as people are building out their brands and starting to build a following. And so it's really important to me to be able to give that back to the people who give it to us in the first place. So yeah, I think, it really does come down to strong relationships and making them a priority.
If we had like a mic drop, I think we should just end this episode here. If you take anything away from this episode, that should be it. Relationships is key. Your network is your network is your net worth, essentially.
Yeah.
Like it will eventually go full circle.
Yeah.
Relationships expand, and then people know of other people, and you never know where it could lead. But relationships are absolutely key.
Yeah, and I think just being curious. Like, I think,
Mm-hmm.
again, I had a walk with my friend this morning and she was like, "Oh, I got to introduce you to this person." And it's just like those little things. You're like, "Oh, maybe I wouldn't have connected that person, but now I will, now that you give them your seal of approval." And I really just think like being open and curious and listening and asking questions, all of those things go such a long way.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you like mentioned it's not just always about business, right? Like this person might just end up being a really great friend, but they might also help you on a personal level as well. You might learn things from them. It might be somebody you aspire to be like one day. Like there's just so much more that can come out of it than business. And it's kind of hard with like social media because I find a lot of the connection requests are centered around trying to open up a sales conversation.
Yeah.
So, how have you kind of navigated that a little bit? Like, have you noticed that at all? How do you go around it?
Yeah. It's a tough one. I have recently been talking to a few friends about this. So, okay, how do I navigate this? I'm still trying to figure it out. I would say I always try to like lead with an open heart and respond to questions that I get with as much information as I can that makes sense within my parameters. That being said, I agree. Like there's a lot of can you do this for me? That is like becoming more and more prevalent. And you know what? Sometimes it's like a simple, I don't really think that's something like I can help with, but like I wish you the best of luck. Or if it's a really awkward request, sometimes I won't respond because at the end of the day, everyone's time is really, really precious. And if it's really not something like I feel like I can come up with a response that makes me feel good, that I think the receiver is going to feel good about as well, it's just something that's maybe not going to be responded to. I don't think you need to respond to every single thing that comes your way. And again, working in sales for 10 years, I had probably 100,000 emails and phone calls combined not responded to. And it is just part of it. Like it takes a lot of at bats to like hit a home run. My son's obsessed with baseball, so I have like these baseball analogies. And I think when the connection makes sense, of course, like you have to take time for people because I think that really is what it's all about. And no one gets anywhere without, a helping hand. And so I really do try and pass it forward when I can. And then sometimes I can't. And that's just the truth. And everyone has a capacity.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about being a mom and a wife with a
Yeah.
thriving business. I mean, I'm a wife, but I'm not a mom, and that's like a whole other ball game. But like even for me with balancing the business and that is like kind of like a struggle sometimes. I'm like, I know I need to be taking this quality time out and like to check out and like spend that time with them. But then I'm like thinking about the business and I'm like, I should be doing this. I have to wrap up this project for a client. So how do you balance this like it's not existent, but like how do you find harmony between all those different roles?
Yeah. You know what? The thing about having kids is you really don't have an option. Like when your kids need you, they need you. There is no like, hold on, honey, like gotta finish the spreadsheet. Like it is that it's so full on. At least my kids are like they're very intense boys that are 2 and 5. And I like don't work when they're around. Like it is actually impossible. So I know like what my confines are every single day and what I have to get done. And I do think that when someone becomes a mom, the time that you have to spend on what you're passionate about or your work, it becomes more fun because you're like, oh, this is like a break. I get to use my adult brain. I'm not like, it's so cute to play dinosaurs, but you don't want to do that all day when you're 33 years old. And yeah, it becomes like more of a passion. Like even when I was still working in my sales job in tech, I really like I enjoyed the time that I got to spend working on myself and getting better at my craft. And so I think that kids have a way of really delineating that line in the sand of like work and life. And of course, like my personal brand is around them and I'll be like posting on Instagram, but I really, really try not to have my phone and my laptop up or around when I'm hanging out with the kids because personally for me, like I cannot do both. Like if my son is asking me a question, I can't also respond to an email from one of our suppliers or from a wholesale account. Like that's my brain doesn't work that way. And so I've really had to prioritize the family. Like beside my health, my family is my number one priority because I can't show up for my family if I don't have my health. And then truthfully, at this point in my life, like work comes after that. And that is one of the great things about not having a ton of investors because we're just answering to ourselves at the end of the day. We can grow this business as quickly as we want or as slowly as we want based on where we're at in our lives. And for both Joni and I, we're very aligned on the fact that like we're creating our families right now. We have young kids, they're taking priority, and that's okay. Like I really do think there needs to be this kind of coming of age of women founders, women in business who don't shy away from being honest about putting their family first. I am like, I want to be at drop off. I want to be at pickup once a week. I want to take Liam to skating. And how are you going to be able to do that? Of course, being an entrepreneur is easier because you have your own schedule. So that's something I worked for a very long time because I knew that I wanted to have that flexibility at this stage in my life. And if I was still working, 9 to 5, how am I going to bake that time into my day? Maybe it's I take 30 minutes every day and have lunch with my son when he comes home from preschool. Maybe like my husband, takes the morning so I can work out and work on myself. And so it's really just finding like what is your priority and how are you going to bake it into your day, no matter who you are or what you do. And B, how are you going to create these systems and put these systems in place so that you can create that reality for yourself? And it's not going to happen overnight. Like it took me 3 years of running my business on the side, which now seems like nothing, but like at the time felt like forever to quit my job and work for One Wednesday full time. And so just knowing that like it's possible, you just have to put in the work and there will be sacrifices along the way.
Absolutely. It's interesting. It took me a while to get to the point where I had to realize that I was going to have to sacrifice something in
Yeah.
order to have the time. A lot of people kind of get to that point a little bit later than they typically should.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes like burning out to realize like my
Yeah,
health is more important than pulling all-nighters to like get my website up and running. Like I think having kids has also helped with that. Like as you go through birth and postpartum, like I was really depleted and I realized really for the first time in my life like how important my health was and how it really was up to me to make sure that I was in control and I was in the driver's seat of what my life was going to look like moving forward. Not only now for when my kids are young, but like honestly, when they're old, like I want to be there. I want to like pick up my grandkids. I want to be a part of their lives for a long time and have a really fruitful, beautiful life myself. And so that starts with like these daily practices of taking care of yourself. And yeah, maybe it means like you're waking up an hour earlier, which means you're going to bed an hour earlier, which means you're not going out for dinner 4 nights a week. But I think thinking about like what is it that you truly want and what sacrifices that, like you said, are gonna take to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned health being one of your top priorities, which I have absolutely agree. If you are not in a good physical, mental, emotional space, you are not going to be able to take care of others. So, what do you do? What do you do on your daily practice or whatever your practice looks like that really helps you reset, get grounded, feel really good?
It's my favorite topic. Like, how long do we have? Oh my gosh, I do so much, but I've really streamlined it over the last, again, 5 years. Like, I kind of like, I feel like my life began again when I had kids, and like pre-kids, I'm like, whatever. Like, I don't even know at this point who I was 5 years ago. Like, I feel like a totally new version of myself. But for the last 5 years, I think, again, having kids, it does put like a structure and routine in your day. And so my kids hopefully stay in their rooms till 7 a.m. That's our goal in this house, is they stay in their rooms till 7 a.m. Liam, my oldest, will wake up a bit earlier, and like he'll read in his room. And we've really tried to like set boundaries and they put toys in their room so they can play. But yeah, so ideally they wake up between 6 and 7, which means that my like me time is like 5 to 7 a.m. And I realized like rather quickly after having my first son that I was never going to sleep in again. And I think that like that realization is really it's a tough one to grapple with, because there's no more like lazy Sundays. And yeah, so that is something to definitely relish if you don't have children. And my me time is like 5 to 7. So 5 a.m. I wake up, I work out. So I work out, I try to work out. Lately it's been almost every day if you count like a hilly walk, because I just really love to move my body. And I'll do anything from lifting weights. I recently got a trainer and I've been absolutely loving strength training. I got interested in it when I read Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive. And it's essentially, I'm not sure if you've read it, but it's basically about how to live the longest possible health span. So, not lifespan, but health span. So, how to live like the longest life possible, but be as healthy as you possibly can. And he pretty much the entire book, like, talks about weightlifting and weight training, especially for women. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'm convinced. Like, I need to learn how to lift weights. And so I've been working with a trainer, Alan Cumberbirch at Yard Athletics, and he's been amazing. I work out with him once a week. And the nice thing about working out with, like, going to a class or working out with someone one-on-one, is it encourages you to kind of keep the momentum going between the sessions so that you can see your strength increasing. So I'll try to do weights on my own as well a couple times a week. And then I'm a huge Pilates girl. I love Pilates. I do that like 1 to 3 times a week. And then a lot of walking. My son most recently started preschool in the forest. So I will walk him to school. And that's been just such an incredible part of my day. Sorry, that's later on. That's at like 8:30. But yeah, so work out first thing at 5 a.m. and then I'll meditate. I used to meditate first and then work out, but I saved up for a really long time and got us a sauna this year. So I like to meditate in the sauna after my workout. And the sauna has been like such a game changer for my skin and immunity. And I absolutely love it. What I used to do before was have really hot baths. Like, that's how I would get that sweat. And so that's like a really good tip if you love that sweaty feeling of like releasing toxins. A really good like Epsom salt bath is a nice alternative. And then I'll make my collagen coffee. I make it every morning. It's the one that's in my reset. That's on my website. And I try to have like a little bit of quiet time after that before the kids wake up, sip my coffee, like ice roll my face, put a mask on, and I'll either like read a nonfiction book, write a few things down, listen to a podcast. And sometimes I'll do a little bit of work before the kids wake up, and just, if I have to like post something, or, there's something that's really calling my attention, I really do try to wait until the kids are out the door to dig into work, because I think once you get into that work mode, it's really hard to turn it off. But realistically, I'm not great at it because I'm such a morning person. So I'm always like raring to go. And then every day at some point I do a walk. So like I said, I've been walking with my son to preschool. That's kind of become my walking time. And I'll do anything on the walk. Like I'll take a call, I will listen to a podcast. Sometimes I just want to listen to music. Sometimes I do nothing. Like I'll put my phone away, and I find walking to be the best way to foster creativity for myself. Like I'll go for a walk. I have 8,000 ideas that come out of the walk. I'll write them all down. I have like sent 30 emails about new projects that I want to create and things that I want to do, or I'll put it on like my master to-do list or ideal list. And yeah, walking has become really crucial for my mental health. And then always eating like as healthily as possible. I love to eat as much protein as I can and tons of fruits and vegetables. I, for the most part, like I would say during the week, really like to kind of focus on healthy eating. And then on the weekend, just enjoy a little bit more and go out for dinner with my husband, eat pizza with my kids, have a glass of wine or two or three. And then yeah, my nighttime is like just as important as my daytime. When my kids go to bed, I am really winding down. I don't really like going out like more than once or twice a week, if I'm being honest. I like really, really value my sleep. And so I'll try to keep that to a minimum. Like sometimes it's 3 times, but not usually. And really just enjoy like a good night's sleep and like wake up and do it all over again.
It's a jam-packed day.
It
I'm
is.
very
And
impressed that you
work.
wake up at 5. Yeah. I'm very impressed that you wake up at 5. I've been trying to get up earlier, but like, whew, 5 a.m., man.
I know. You know what? It wasn't 5 before, but once my kids like came into the picture, it was like if I don't wake up at 5, then it's not going to get done. And so for me, like every morning it's hard. Like I've never gotten like my alarm has not gone off at 5 where I'm like, great, like time to get up. It's always, oh my God, like okay, you can do this. Like what are you grateful for? Why are you doing this? You want to feel your best, like being grateful for that time as well, I think really helps.
It's funny. It's funny that you just mentioned that because sometimes I feel like, I don't know if anybody else tuning in has felt like this, but it would be easy. Like you would enjoy getting up at 5 a.m. But hearing that people actually know they get up at 5 a.m., but they don't enjoy it. It's hard, but they still
Yeah.
do it. It's kind of like a little aha moment, like, okay,
Yeah, I
it is
think it's
doable.
it's one of those things where it's like you realize the net benefit is positive, but the actual act of doing it is one of the hardest things I do every day. Like I think people have this misconception that I'm like I am energetic in the morning, like once I've done my workout and started drinking my coffee, but like every morning at 5 a.m. to get up and, go to wherever it is in your house that you work out, it's not easy. And it never is easy. It just, you become more used to the feeling of it not being easy. It's like taking a cold shower. Like I love a cold shower. It's never easy, but I know how I'm going to feel after.
Same thing. I can do the plunge, like I can go in cold like rivers and all that stuff. I'm totally fine, but the shower,
Yeah. I
can't
need
do
to
it.
do like the ocean and the river thing more. I like don't make time for that, but I think that would be a nice addition.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's easier for me, at least. I find some
I
of
I
you
have
enjoy it.
heard like it's easier, like you're either like submerged or you're out, whereas a shower you're kind of like, okay, it's just your
It's
back,
like,
it's just your shoulder. Yeah, I see that.
yeah. All right. So, if anybody wants to learn more about you, where can they connect with you?
They can connect with me through my Instagram, which is my name, Sophie, and then it has a middle C. Don't miss the middle C. Collins so that's at Sophie C. Collins. And then my website is my name, sophiecollins.com. And then for One Wednesday, you can check us out at one_Wednesday_shop on Instagram and onewednesdayshop.com on the web.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sophie, for taking the time for sharing your journey as well as your insights and expertise in creating a business. Your insights were so valuable. I know that lots of people are going to have great takeaways from everything that you said. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a really beautiful conversation, and I'm so grateful.